Okay, currently we're on a screen that you first log into CPRS before you actually select a patient. It's called the patient selection screen. You can select a patient by typing in the first letter of their last name, the last four of their social security number. You can enter it entering their last name, comma, first name, no space, or you can, here you can see you can click by ward or by clinic if you were an outpatient situation. So we're going to select ZZ Test Global for our purposes here. When you select, click on the name once, you'll see their social security number, their date of birth, gender, veteran, and if they have any service connection and a percentage, that would show right underneath here. Okay, now before we go further, down at the bottom here, you'll notice there's a bunch of view alerts that Angelo has. Okay, what those are things that you need to be aware of. Maybe you started a note on a patient and didn't have time to finish it and get called away. The system will alert you that you still have this unsigned document. If you create your own team list for patients that you're on the floor, they will alert you, like if there's any lab results, if they've been admitted even after they leave the floor, so be aware of that, but we'll talk about that in patient preferences. But generally, you'll see like anything unsigned, or if you're part of interdisciplinary rounds and somebody identifies you as an additional signer, you'll get notified here that the note is ready for you to view and sign. So to go into global ZZ test chart, we're going to say OK here, and then we're brought to the cover sheet. This is like a snapshot of what is in the patient's record. So we're on the cover sheet here, and the first thing you want to check whenever you log in is to make sure you see a little blue man icon here with a chain link, okay? That's called clinical context, and when you go into other applications like iMed Consent, Vista Imaging, you will always be brought to the same patient. You do not want to see a little family here, which looks like this. It looks like multiple people with a broken link. Then you won't be able to get into those other applications, so keep that in mind. If you see a broken link, you can try to rejoin the link if possible. If not, close CPRS and reopen it. I haven't seen a lot of these issues lately, but every once in a while there's a CPRS update and the problem starts occurring again. To the right of that, in this little yellow window here, you see the last name, comma, first name, and you can see global is an outpatient. For inpatients, it will say inpatient here, and then right to the right of that, it'll show the building, the ward, and the bed number that they're in, okay? Below the patient's name, you see their social security number here, their date of birth, and then their ages in parentheses for us, okay? For personal information, if you click on that yellow box, it's called a patient inquiry. You can see their residential address, their permanent address. If they have a temporary address, like some of our patients are snowbirds, they head south for the winter time, so you might see that address here. Okay, religious preferences, service connection, if they're still an active duty patient, because we do have military as well. I'll go into that in just a second. And then as you go down towards the bottom, there's like next of kin information and things like that. So that's all right here. Okay, so we can close that. To the right of that yellow is here where it's, mine shows visit not selected because global ZZ test is an outpatient. With you working in an inpatient situation, everything will be tied to that ward visit. However, if you all of a sudden get called to work or transfer to an outpatient location, you always want to make sure that your clinic is selected here, that you're checked in. So for our purposes here, so that everything is connected correctly, I'm going to click on that little button, and I'm going to pick, now remember this is a test patient, I'm just going to pick test Sharon because that's a test clinic. You also want to make sure your name or the provider you're working under's name is up here. Okay, so we'll say okay here. So now everything that I do with this outpatient will be appropriately tagged to that clinic visit. If you don't pick the appropriate visit, you get little messages from your business managers and that, you know, this note wasn't, there's no note for this visit because it may have been attached to the wrong one, things like that. It causes problems later. So right underneath the visit, you also have who the provider is that's documenting for that particular patient, whether that it might be you or it will be the provider that's in charge of the patient. If they've been assigned to a PAC team for down in the primary clinic area, that name will be here. If they have a mental health primary care provider, that name would be down here. Okay. Patient flag, that's a window that will pop open just as soon as you open the patient record, and there's a couple different types. One can have like an orange background, and those are usually more of your mental health awareness. Like you could have like a suicidal patient, a homicidal patient, somebody that's tried to escape before. It's just so that you're aware of it when taking care of that patient. There's also some that are like highlighted in blue. You might see multiple eligibilities, and that should be like a little light bulb going off that it could be it's a DOD, whether it's an active duty or one of their retiree sponsors, children, something like that, okay? And they should be joint registered, and that's what it's kind of telling you, okay? JLV is Joint Legacy Viewer. We're going to talk about that later. You bet we'll go over that. Remote data we don't really use. The little red alarm clock are clinical reminders that are due for patients. Those are related to like gender-based, diagnosis-based, some things we screen on annually, and it's just a reminder to the provider it's time to do these for that patient. This is the patient postings area, or CWAD area. So C is for clinical notes, W is a clinical warning, A is an allergy, and D is an advance directive. So you can see any combination of those letters there for your particular patient. The one thing about this entire ribbon that I just went over is no matter where you are in the patient record, like if we go to the notes tab or anywhere, that will always be there for you. So if you're documenting in a progress note what the patient's allergy was, you can actually click on it. They'll open up for you, and then you can close it and go back to documenting, okay? Those patient postings also show right here. Like this has a life-sustaining treatment. You can open it up to see what their requested code status is. That's what that's for. And we'll go more into that later. So that's the initial ribbon here. Then we're going to go left to right, top to bottom. So first we have active problems. These are all of the active problems that have been entered in for this particular patient. The little asterisk in front of it means it's an acute problem for the patient. To the right of that are all of the allergies that have been entered for this patient. Now, if you're admitting a patient for the first time, you might see in this window it says no allergy assessment. To enter an allergy, you can just right mouse click. If they didn't have any allergies at the time the marked patient is having no known allergies will be lit up for you to be able to select, or you can also enter a new allergy at this point. To do that, you just click on it. This window will show up, and then you can start typing in the name of the allergy. Click on search. We'll click on penicillin. And then this window pops up for you to fill out with information regarding that. So the allergen is penicillin, what the nature of the reaction is, symptoms that they might have, was this observed or historical, and any comments that you might have about the allergy. And then when you're done, you would just click OK. All right? Yes, I want to cancel. If you have any questions, like I had mentioned before about the allergies or any of these, you can just click on the word and it will open up and you can see more information, who entered the allergy, when it was documented, and if there's been any further comments on it. Okay? All right. We kind of talked about patient postings. You can kind of scroll through here, but these are things that you might want to be aware of with taking care of the patient. It looks like they're practicing life-sustaining treatment. Pregnancy, legal blindness, my story kind of tells a veteran's story on everything that they've gone through, things like that, but I'll leave you to look at those at your leisure. Next, we have active medications. So if you have an inpatient, you will see their inpatient medications here. If you have an outpatient, you will see their outpatient medications. Non-VA medications are medications the patient is taking but are not prescribed through the VA. an example would be, it might be cheaper to buy a big bottle of aspirin at Costco versus what the VA copay is for that patient. So some patients purchase them on the outside. There's also medications that might not be on formulary here for veterans, and so they see an outside provider and get their prescriptions there. Some patients have herbs and different things that they like to take, but it's better that the provider documents all these to make sure there isn't any medication interactions when they're prescribing meds for them here. And we'll talk more about that from the meds tab. Okay, if you have any questions about a particular medication, once again, you can select it. You can see who ordered, when it was ordered, who the pharmacist was that confirmed it. With outpatient medications, like if you're admitting a patient, you can actually look to see, is the patient getting them refilled? Are they truly taking the medication? Okay, and that's kind of more towards the bottom. Okay. Next is the clinical reminders. These are the reminders due for this particular patient, like this one, an annual LDL for whatever reason he's being monitored on that. These are processed mostly by outpatient nurses and physicians. There are a couple inpatient ones, but you actually work through these from the progress notes tab. Okay. Lower left, recent lab results. So inpatient, you will see the last 7 days worth lab results. Outpatients, it's generally the last 6 months. What you would see here is like CBC. You could click on it and open up and see what everything is there. Okay, it isn't just like the hemoglobin is this, hematocrit is that. It's just the blood test itself, and then you open it up. Also, you can get a lot of that information from the labs tab. There's a couple places to view it. Okay, moving right along, this is the vitals area here, and this is the most recent set of electronically entered vital signs. Our little carts that get moved around to take vital signs do not automatically upload vitals. So they do have to be electronically entered. To enter them, you click on any one of the values, and then this window is going to pop up. Okay. You might get a yellow window in front of this if your patient isn't admitted. Like if you're just getting a patient and say admitting hasn't officially admitted them to the ward yet, it'll show yellow. Okay. To enter vitals in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to click on Enter Vitals. And then this template will open up for you. Okay. Here is if the patient is out on pass, if you've got somebody that's been in there for a while. Okay. U means they're unavailable, they could be gone for a test. R means the patient refused, which occasionally does happen. Okay, and then you would just check one of those boxes. To enter in a temperature, you can practice entering in a result here. Qualifiers, if you click on that little down arrow, you can see it's asking for the location of the temperature, and you can say that you got an oral temperature here. Pulse, we can enter in an amount, we'll say 85, and we click that down arrow, and so you took a left, lying, at rest, and say a radial temperature, and say okay. So all of that's put in there. Respirations, I'm just trying to show you what all of these are. So we're going to say lying again and at rest. Okay? When you're done with everything, you will click Save and Exit. And then you can see your vital signs are right here. If you want to see a trend of what's going on, you can click All Results. And then you can kind of see, like I had clicked on pulse, so that's what's trending up here to see how his pulse has been running. If you wanted to take a look at what their blood pressure has been running, you can click on blood pressure down here, and then up at the top you will see how it's trending. Okay. Now let's say, oops, we put these vitals on the wrong patient, which happens. Up in the upper right-hand area again, there's an entered an error. And let's say we're just going to mark today's temperature and error. We'll say it's an incorrect patient. Mark is entered an error. Are you sure? Yes. And then it's removed from the record. Okay? And that's it as far as vital signs. Just the X to close that. So over to the right are appointments, visits, and admissions. This is based on a date range that's already set. It's how the package comes in. However, this is one thing that you can choose a personal preference on how far back you want to look and how far into the future you want to see those appointments. Now, mental health, you kind of have to watch that because some of them could have a lot of individual sessions, a lot of group sessions. So you could have a 90-day window, but because the patient is having a lot of stuff going on, when you try to enter that patient's record, it could lock up because it's trying to pull too much in, which I suggest then is just go to a different patient, narrow your date range window, and then you can go back into that patient's record. But we'll talk about that later with personal preferences. If you've done all your notes correctly, especially for outpatient, everything is linked appropriately like I talked about. If you click on one of these, you should see the note there. That way you know everything is linked correctly. Okay, let's see, I think all of these are canceled. I don't think there's one where I can, oh, here's a note that they did right there, so it's all linked up appropriately. So every note that has been done in that visit would show up in this window. Okay, as an inpatient, you're not going to have to worry about that. Okay, that's the cover sheet.